Hi everybody again. I am back with, unfortunately, not a video on Henry James today. I am still working on my notes. I'm trying to condense them as much as possible so that the videos on him can be concise, because when you're introducing anyone to anything at all, particularly a fantastic writer like Henry James who has such a large output, it's good to stay brief. It really is. So instead today, I'm going to talk about something else I would like to, if you haven't already gotten into it, introduce you to, and that is literary criticism. I don't see a lot on BookTube about it. There are a few videos, a few booktubers enjoy it, so there are a few videos in which they will really gush about it or really, describe the experience of reading it, but really they are very few and far between. So I'm going to add another one to the rather small pile. Today I'm here with a bunch of books that I think are excellent for anyone first getting into it, and they're also good for leading you into further books, further experiences later on. They really will make you want to read more. So, to start, I have right here Possessed by Memory by Harold Bloom. He is he's considered the foremost American literary critic. He is a professor at Yale, and he's excellent, but he's very controversial because of his polemics. He constantly likes to engage with people who he believes cheapen the reading experience, who he believes don't really know how to read a book, and therefore cannot properly criticize books, cannot properly talk about them to people who want to read them, people who love to read them. So he has a big problem with that, and he makes sure to let you know. However, in this book here, all of that is gone. There is no fight, there is no argument. In this book, he does what I love to do. He just gushes about his favorite books. Many of them, and this is amazing, many of his favorites he has memorized entirely. We're talking Othello, Macbeth, multiple long poems of Percy Bysshe Shelley, and his complete play, his complete drama in verse. I mean, as a writer, Harold Bloom is amazing. As a memory, he is amazing. And really, if you really want to get into literary criticism, start here, because he will get you so enthusiastic about not only criticism but books generally that you won't be able to put him down, and you won't be able to wait to see what the next critic has to say about books. And the next critic I'm going to show you is Virginia Woolf, the Empress of literary criticism. She is primarily known, of course, for her novels, her amazing novels, my favorite of which is The Waves. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You have to read it. But this right here is, oh, sorry for covering that up, this is a common reader. This is her first published collection of critical essays. She went through a bunch of the ones that she had written for The Guardian and for other magazines, and she edited the holy living crud out of them and then put them into a book. I read her diaries on the subject. It was a tantalizing process. She put a lot into it, and really you can tell. There's nothing stilted, there is nothing overdone. Everything in here, she is so enthusiastic. She is such a phenomenal mind. She has every last thing that you could possibly want from a literary critic. The humor, the depth of interest, the extensive experience with reading. She has it all. It helps that she was also a genius at prose. So pick this up. The next one Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde. What hasn't been said about him, but he was an awesome critic. An awesome critic. And if you read his essay, for instance, The Critic as Artist, you really get a sense of what critics are about, why you should read criticism, because what he basically tries to tell you is critics are extreme readers. They love reading. They love it so much that they can't help thinking about it and talking about it and writing about it all the time. And they want you to love it. They want you to understand what the experience is like. Yes, and they want you to understand what you're looking at. But they also want you really, really deeply to connect with it. And he helps you to do that. He demonstrates. I mean, it's fantastic. He's funny. He's completely involved, and he never looks down at the person that he's writing for. He understands that you are a reader just as he is, and he is here to talk with you. It's fantastic. It's kind of cool, too, that the essay I've mentioned is written in dialogue form. So, very interesting. Very interesting. Next, we are crossing now into the 20th century from, well, Virginia Woolf was in the 20th century, yes, but we're going a little bit later. And here is Elizabeth Hardwick. She is one of the co-founders of the New York Review of Books, and this is the New York Review of Books edition of her collected essays. I mean, this has so many gems in it. It's almost ridiculous. When you read her literary criticism, as knowledgeable as she was, as very well-read and very understanding and insightful, she's never conceited, and she is never in any way self-congratulatory. She works for readers, and in every way she does. There are quite a few pieces in here also on her social criticism, and those are amazing too. The entire book is worth reading, but her literary criticism is so fantastic. It's penetrating. It has a wicked humor, and if you dig into this, you will enjoy it. I promise you will enjoy it. And next, one of my absolute favorites, Cynthia Osek. I mean, Virginia Woolf is one of my absolute favorites too, and she was, of course, a genius. Cynthia Osek, however, is so devoted to the great writers, to great reading, to excellence, period. Excellence in art, excellence of intention. She is so devoted to it that truly, as you are reading, your brain is lit on fire. There is no, you cannot stop, and you can, and afterward, after you're finished racing through this book, you're going to be thinking for a while about what she has to say. She tackles the current reading scene and the current critical scene, which is not to say that she simply comments on internet reading and then says, have a nice day. No, she really gets into what reading currently means to people, what it seems to mean to people, according to her observations. And she wants people to get more into it. She wants you, when you are reading, to understand that you are going into a piece of time when you're reading. There's a respect to be paid to a book, no matter what book you're reading, even if it's a terrible one. There's a respect to be paid, and she pays full respect to every reading experience, even the ones she doesn't like. So, in fact, some of you might be surprised that she is not extremely fond of Dostoevsky. And the first, she has a couple of bits in here on him that are very good. And she wrote a piece on Lionel Trilling, the critic of the early 20th century. I got his book, The Moral Obligation to be Intelligent, because I read about Trilling in this book. That's what she does. She gets you fired up about criticism, about the books that she is writing about, and, well, another one of the authors I picked up because of her was William H. Gass, the late William H. Gass. This was the first book I read of his. In Critics, Monsters, and Fanatics, she writes about his novel Middle Sea. Well, I read that later. I loved it. But there's something very special about this book right here, A Temple of Texts. William H. Gass is very, very colorful. He understands that the reader has a full imagination, and he wants to do it justice. So he takes you on a ride in every one of his essays. Probably his most famous essay is included in this book, and it is the eponymous essay, A Temple of Texts, 50 Literary Pillars. And you have to read it. You have to get this book, read it in book format, because you're going to want to keep going over it and over it and over it and over it again. He talks about, everybody from Plato to Thomas Mann to Rainer Maria Rilke, who he translated. It's with such fire and humor and, again, force of imagination that you just cannot put him down. You can't. It really helps that he was massively intelligent and so very thoughtful that he gets you completely involved. So pick this up too. He's amazing. Now, again, because of Cynthia Osek, I read Harold Bloom, who I introduced at the very beginning. Yes, she's a big part of my life. Criticism is a big part of my life. And the next one that I want here, yes, this is the last recommendation. This is The Haul of Uselessness by Simon Leys. This was a surprising experience for me. I've read more than half of it already. I just got it about a week and a half ago. I've already read about half of this thing. On the picture here, see, if you can kind of see him, he appears exactly as he was. He was a sinologist. Mm-hmm. So there it is. He was very much into Chinese culture. And as a literary critic, he knew that you should approach a book from multiple different perspectives. And he chooses several. And one of them is the perspective of the Chinese political thinker. It's very interesting. Do I always agree with his observations? No. But do you always agree with any critic's observations? Of course not. You're not supposed to. They're not supposed to be right. They're just supposed to be imaginative as book lovers, as readers, thinkers who read and who live on books. That's their job. And an amazing job some of them do. He does a great job at giving you a full picture of literature as it affects the world. And it's massively interesting. You have to pick this up if you can. You have to. The Haul of Uselessness. Get it. Love it. Okay, that is it for my recommendations. I cannot tell you enough how much I love literary criticism and how much I think you really have to read it. You just do. Don't take my word for it. I'm not even doing a very good job at explaining the joy of reading it. Read it yourself and find out. Speaking of criticism, I have a Victober update for all of you. I have been reading George Bernard Shaw's The Perfect Wagnerite, and I did not expect George Bernard Shaw, the towering, powerful, feared theater critic of the 19th century. I didn't expect him to be so dang funny. I didn't expect to just it's a sardonic kind of humor, and it's a very you're always sitting with him. You're nodding the entire time. You're nodding like, yep, I get that, totally get that. It's funny because it's totally true. This is delightful. I can see why in his lifetime it went through, I believe, 4 editions. And he wrote a preface to each one. And wow, it's so much fun. This is so much fun. Again, I did not expect this from George Bernard Shaw. Again, as I said in my previous video, he was a playwright. He was most famous for his plays, but I'm sorry to anybody who is a fan of the plays. I've read a couple of them. I love his criticism more. I just do. I love the way he writes about music and theater. It's fascinating. You have to get this. Do get it. It's very short, so pick it up. And another part of my Victober update. Just yesterday, I went out and I went to Barnes & Noble, and I just looked around for maybe another artist that I've been wanting to get into but have put off for a very long time. And immediately, the person who came to mind as I was walking back to, yes, I wanted poetry. So I walked straight back to the poetry section, and the first name that came to mind was Elizabeth Barrett Browning. So I picked this up. Wow. What a poet. For me, it's kind of like Clara Schumann and her husband, Robert Schumann. Clara was more innovative. She sounded in her music a little bit more modern, more forward-looking. That's what I get from Elizabeth Browning. Her husband was brilliant. Robert Browning was a brilliant poet. But there's something so special about Elizabeth. She doesn't pretend to be anything phenomenal. She doesn't think of herself as anything special, but she is. She was. Her poetic mind was towering, as great as her husband's, and in some ways more interesting. Pick her up if you haven't read her ever. Do pick her up. She needs to be read more. And then finally, I have still been reading Middlemarch by George Eliot, Marianne Evans. Oh my God. How to describe the experience of reading this thing? I read in a Harold Bloom essay about the great English novels and the 2 primary contenders for the great English novel. The 2 of them were Charles Dickens's Bleak House, which is a very good book, and Middlemarch, which is, this thing will change your life. It'll change your reading life. You will look at writing and the writer's imagination, and of course literary theory as art, theory period as art, when you read this book. Don't let that put you off. This is not boring. This is not in any way just a novel meant for her to just tell you all of her ideas and pretend she's telling a story. That is not what this is. This is one of the most perfect books I have ever seen in my life. And I want everything by her. I want everything George Eliot ever wrote now. I can't believe what I have read. I've only read about 25-30 pages. I'm stunned. I am enraptured. I am completely just, I feel this little thing inside of me, a little piece of me, about to really come to life. Only the best books do that for you. Get this. Any edition at all. I have the Collector's Library edition. Get any edition. This is astounding. So, okay, that is my my video for today. Again, I hope tomorrow to come to you with a second Henry James video. I am reading his Princess Casamassima, a novel of his I have not read yet, so I will update you on that as I go along. But for now, I hope that this has gotten you interested in criticism, interested for those of you who are mainly interested in fiction too, in a bit of nonfiction. I hope this I don't know. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see your comments. I've very much enjoyed sharing with all of you and talking with all of you. You guys are amazing. To any of my new subscribers out there, comment as much as possible. And I will leave you today with the well, I want you to really know that I was apprehensive about creating a YouTube channel for a very long time. And now, with the way you guys have been, I can't believe I was. I thank you guys so much for just showing me how great this can be. I will see you all tomorrow, and thank you for sharing. I will see you guys tomorrow.